Hello, so my name is Arnold, and I'm here today with my colleague Josh from Impact Teaching. So, what we're doing today is having a bit of a deep dive with Josh. You very well may know him from our Instagram, from the amazing blog posts he does. But what we're doing today is just a bit more of a deep dive because he's done so much with us, like in terms of being an English teacher in Thailand, well, first in China, then in Thailand, and now working with us for several years, living in Thailand as well. So there's so much to talk about. So this is a kind of a more extended conversation. We're kind of delving into some of those Josh's background. I feel, Josh, I know you well, but like my goal, like we said, like is that I want to know more about you and learn new things today. So I'm really looking forward to it. So let's kind of dive in early. Um, where did you grow up?
I grew up, I would say Cambridge. I was born in the north of England. So deep down, I'm a northerner. But as you can probably tell from my voice, all my memories were Cambridge, cycling around. I feel very lucky. It was kind of quite an idyllic place to live, very safe. Yeah, kind of multicultural, but like, yeah, really good place to grow up.
Exactly. And then obviously, you were getting to the stage of maybe getting into uni. Where did you go to uni and kind of how did you decide on what you were going to do at uni?
Yeah, so I went to uni in Manchester. Part of the reason was I'm a Man City fan. My stepdad is a big Man City fan. He kind of, when I met him when I was at primary school, he basically said, if you don't have a team, you're going to be supporting City. So I said, yeah, okay, why not? And then, yeah, to be honest, part of the reason I chose Manchester as a city was to be, go and be able to watch City and kind of have that experience, which I know seems silly. There were other things, other factors as well, like friends going there. A lot of people from Cambridge went up to Manchester, and one of my best friends decided to go to the same uni. So we kind of went there together. In terms of being motivated by the course, I did filmmaking. I did apply to get into the London Film School. That was kind of my first choice and didn't quite get in there. So Manchester was kind of the second choice. And I think, yeah, I've always been interested in the kind of creative side of thing, writing stories, making up stories. I used to with my dad when we go on long car trips. Kind of, we used to make up stories and kind of I'd say a bit of a story and he'd add a story. So I think that kind of creative aspect has always been part of me. And I think filmmaking was something I always enjoyed watching films with my dad. He's an actor as well. So I think he really like influenced me to have a desire to go into filmmaking, kind of behind the camera rather than an actor, but definitely that was the motive. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you enjoy the course?
Not particularly. I think the reason why I didn't enjoy it was more artistic. It was kind of how to say visual art. A lot of the courses were kind of visual art. So I don't know, banana going moldy over the space of a week on a time lapse, and
I
then
remember you saying this, yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
whole screen, whatever, just kind of stuff that I personally doesn't excite me that much. Um, and yeah, to be completely honest, I think I wasn't really ready to work hard. As a 19, 20-year old. I think if I was to go back now and to kind of redo it, I got a 2-1. I did well. My final project was just the best, possibly the best week of my life. I had this crew of people, friends, and kind of, yeah, all of them were friends, basically, and colleagues. And I directed this short film in London. And one of the guys who I've known since I was quite young, he's a brilliant actor, so I had this cast of actors and crew around me, and I was in complete control, and I loved that. And we had a budget. We would be in Hounslow filming in a location, and then we'd be in Limehouse, just all over, kind of getting taxis around, filming. That bit I loved. Just even if it was going to uni just for that, that was great. And I put everything into that. But I think the rest of the course, maybe I wasn't quite ready. And yeah, if ever I get a chance to go back and do a master's or something, I'll put more into it. But yeah, I still got a 2-1, and I wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't be here right now if I hadn't gone to uni. So even if uni's doesn't actually isn't what you think it's going to be, it unlocks so many doors, like teaching abroad, doesn't it?
Exactly, because I guess this is the time, sort of when you were doing this project. I guess I remember we first met in the spring of 2019 when you were a final year student, I think, or had you maybe just finished already at that point? But when did you
Yeah,
graduate? When was the end of your course?
2018,
2018.
2018.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think after uni, I got a job as a carer, which was interesting for a guy with a brain injury,
Okay.
which was like a yeah, amazing thing to do. Difficult job, but also very easy at the same time. But yeah, definitely helped me grow as a person. And then yeah, and then China happened.
So
Yeah.
how did that come about? Because I guess I did meet you then 1 year after uni in this case. So you had obviously decided to go to China. You came to one of our social events. So how did your decision to go to China come about?
Well, to be honest, I'd always loved traveling, kind of been to Brazil, Jamaica, Southeast Asia, some really cool places. But I think China didn't massively appeal, in all honesty. It wasn't
Yeah.
like top of my list of places to go. But my ex-girlfriend was studying Chinese language and culture. And I think it kind of seeped in that actually, wow, this is quite an interesting place. I think if we have no connection with China, just through the media, it's normal. My parents maybe were like this before I went. They have a certain view of what China's like. But I think she kind of broke that down over the time we were together. And then she said, I've got to go and do a year in China, in Shanghai. And I thought, I think I'd love to come. And obviously she was fine with that. And then, yeah, I've been thinking about this chat. And I remember the very first time we spoke. I remember the room I was in. I can't remember the time of year or anything like that, but I remember the room. And I just remember, yeah, the excitement. I'd literally Googled teach English in China. And the company was the first one or the second one, did have a call back. And then within like, yeah, however long, I just remember speaking to you for that first time. So yeah, the rest is history after that, I guess. That was 2018, probably late 2018, maybe early 2019.
And then I guess you touched on it a bit there, because I think that's an interesting topic to think about a little bit. Like, how did your parents feel about this? Like the fact that you were going away for sort of a year. How was that decision? What kind of conversations did you have with them?
It's hard to remember too well,
Mhm.
because it was a long time ago. I think, having subsequently gone away to teach in Thailand and then more recently to live, I can kind of comment on that more easily. I think there was some, what's the word, kind of caution about China as a place.
Mhm.
But I think after kind of reassuring them, this was obviously pre-COVID, pre any kind of recent horrible stuff that's happened in the world.
Mhm.
I think they were initially shocked, China, wow. But then I think the more we talked about it and the more they understood it, and the more I told them about the job and stuff, I think they were excited. I think at that age, I would have been 22. So I wasn't just fresh out of uni. I think they were excited for me and like the prospect of learning about a new culture and the new skills I'd learn as a teacher. But I think they'd have that worry. What if something happened? They're far away. And I certainly know my dad was probably like, go for it, have fun. My mum was more like nervous, but that's normal.
So there's so much to talk about, obviously, when it comes to China. I'm thinking now, as you're saying that, I'm curious, like, what was the overall impact it had on you? Let's say from the day you flew out for training in Beijing to the day you went on holiday in Thailand, or you were in Asia, right? Like let's say 4 or 5 months later, when you've done your first semester in China, like how did it impact you? How did you change as a person in that first period?
Tough. I think one thing which is quite relevant is how everyone is the same, And I think this, having taught everywhere and seeing children from from China, from Thailand, from England, I think there is this idea that, yeah, the culture is so different. And it hits you like a ton of bricks, but in a good way. Just people's mannerisms, their demeanors, the things they do, the things they eat, the smells, the build, everything's so different. And I'd been like as a tourist, but kind of living there and thinking this is the reality. It's kind of like, wow, it's definitely a lot, but it's exciting. I was just excited for the whole time I was there. But then what you realize after that initial shock of like, this is so different, you realize people are just the same. Obviously they do stuff differently, and yeah, they definitely think different nationalities think differently. But I think, yeah, the similarity uh yeah, shines through more, especially with the children. You know, the children, whether it's, Chinese child or an English child, I was just shocked. I was like, they're the same, maybe more well behaved.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I had a similar sort of similar dynamic and conclusion, I think, but as you, but I mean, also for you as a person, like how do you think you changed from the moment you set foot in China to sort of a few months later having experienced all of it?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I guess there's more. To be honest, I think it was such a short time,
Yeah.
and it was followed on by such an eventful experience. Like COVID happened straight after that. I feel like it's hard to comment on how China changed me,
Mm.
more like how the whole kind of overall China and then COVID. Yeah, it just gave me. I don't think it made me more resilient or anything like that, because I think, it was just such a buzz for me. There were obviously tough days, but for me personally, every day was like exciting, going on the metro. So I was there August, September, October, November, December, 5 months.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, just there was so much to do, so much to see, so much to learn, that I don't think in that first 5 months there was anything but excitement. There were tough days too, but yeah, I can't say I think I changed much. What preceded that, what came after that was COVID, and having to, you know, having all my stuff in China,
Yeah.
having a dog who was staying with a friend in China, basically having to come back to the UK and your whole life be halfway across the world. That was more like, I definitely grew more during COVID, as I think many people did.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe let's go into that a little bit. Obviously, it's not something anyone wants to think about too much anymore, I think, because it was such a tough time. But I guess like, so where were you when it happened, and when did you realize it was going to be something serious? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it was the best holiday of my life. It's so good. Thailand was good. My ex-girlfriend and I, we came to Thailand and traveled a bit. And then we went to Myanmar,
yeah,
which was just like the best place I've ever been, I think. It was like stepping back in time. Um, we met a few Westerners, but they were like explorers, hardcore travelers. We're not hardcore travelers, but these guys were. And it was just, yeah, just so beautiful. People so friendly, really traditional, and like stunning nature. And I just remember one day we rented a motorbike and just drove around the mountains, and just utterly beautiful kind of mountains, sunset, kind of orange mountains, orange sun. And we were driving, and we just saw a gate, a small short gate. And in the gate, there was like a few Buddhas. We kind of stopped and we thought, we'll have a look. And we walked in, and there was like thousands upon thousands of Buddhas just in a random field in the countryside, no people around, just in slightly kind of different poses, a bit smaller than human size. but it's just a fascinating country, really, really beautiful. And yeah, so I'm glad I got to go there before, now it's obviously not possible.
Mm.
But yeah, we started getting messages from friends in China that they're heading back to the UK or heading back wherever to France or whatever. And we thought, okay, well, that's not good. If people are really starting to worry, but we're going to go back because we've got a dog and everything's there and we're sure it'll be fine. And then our flight got cancelled from Yangon or wherever it was to China got cancelled. And at that point, we thought maybe it's not a good idea. And the whole idea, which I'm sure many teachers of my cohort did, headed back to the UK just for a month or two for it to blow over and then go back to China. And yeah, got back to the UK and had this complete arrogance. I went to a football match with my dad, thousands of people crammed into little, like, get your pie and pint at halftime, and just had this, arrogance that it can never come to England. This is a, Asian thing or Chinese thing. How stupid were we? And then, the rest is, yeah, we won't need to talk about the rest of it.
No, exactly. No, it's a tough time for sure. So then obviously we were in touch together about you potentially going back to China. That was very difficult, and it's kind of in line with what we were just talking about, how it was such a difficult time. So I guess maybe we just kind of skip forward and talk about how then Thailand became a potential consideration for you. So I guess you'd been there at that point. You knew Thailand a bit. So what were your thoughts then about kind of switching from China to Thailand?
Yeah, I think it was somewhere maybe I'd always wanted to teach and to live, but China just more so. China kind of had a few more things on the checklist of what's better. But as you said,
So
after
tell me
trying,
about this. Actually, what was at that time? What was your checklist, and what were the pros and cons for each of them?
I think financially, China's obviously better.
Yes,
And I
yes.
think it was the big city living in China.
Mm.
Even if you're in a small city or in a big city. And I think, my opinion has changed now. But I think at the time it was wanting to be somewhere really busy and exciting and meet loads of people and have kind of like exciting life. Whereas now I'm a bit calmer. um, and I think, because partly because I'd set up a life in China, and I'd had experience in the school system and I'd had stuff there and I'd been learning Chinese and not a lot, but a little bit. I'd started and it was like not finished yet. So it was always wanting to go back and finish what I'd started, but it just ever increasingly became clear that wasn't going to be able to happen at that point. It had been a year and a half. And I think looking back in the grand scheme of my life, I ended up going to Thailand only a year and a half later.
Mhm.
But I would have had to wait double that to get to China.
Definitely. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah,
So then when you got to Thailand, it was quite a different, like you said, it's a very different type of city, much smaller,
yeah.
rural, not like Shanghai, nothing like Shanghai. So I guess when you first arrived in Phetchabun, was that like a hard adjustment, or did you take to it instantly?
I think there was such a buzz to get out of the UK.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, like I still feel that today, hence why I'm not necessarily in the UK. But it was also the COVID stuff, just happy to get out and experience something. So I don't remember having any issues with the kind of smallness of Phetchabun at first. After maybe months or, I was itching. I think I went in October and the first kind of big holiday was in April, and I was itching to get out, just to get on a holiday, because it was a small town vibe. Occasional weekend trips to Bangkok were really exciting, but I think initially wasn't an issue. Like I said with China, I was just excited, But then it did become, oh, it's a smaller town, maybe um, wouldn't be somewhere to live long term, because it was smaller. Yeah.
So something I think people that might be watching this, they might be wondering, okay, like for you, so you taught in China and in Thailand. What was like when it comes to the kids and the school systems and things like that, like what were the main differences that you experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I think both of my experiences in China and Thailand were quite relaxed. In China, I was in state schools. There wasn't a significant amount of pressure on me. I was in one school 3 days a week and then another school one day and another school one day in Shanghai, which was great because I got to travel around the city and see different areas. But yeah, none of them were really putting pressure on me. I was with the young kids, so it was fun. It was, yeah, not no pressure. Thailand again, not much pressure, but I was with older kids. And just the attitude of the students is completely different because in China, you'd have students that were maybe a bit scared and a bit tentative and a bit nervous. But they were all very disciplined and would listen. And it was more about having the energy to bring the enthusiasm out. Whereas the Thai kids, full of enthusiasm, just for the wrong things some of the time. A lot of them were really, really good and worked really hard. But I was initially with 18-year-olds, 17, 18-year-olds, and a lot of them were lovely kids, but a lot of them didn't have an interest in learning English. They're interested in their boyfriend or their girlfriend or whatever, by
Yeah.
that age. Moved on to the younger kids, and I found them easier. They were kind of 11, 12. Um, the question was, yeah, what's
Yeah, so the differences, I guess, so motivation level sounds like, so do you think, I
okay.
guess it's hard for you to speak maybe from direct personal experience, but do you think that that was due to the age difference, or do you think that in a teenager in China would have behaved in the same way as a teenager in Thailand?
Yeah, I think I've taught teenagers in China online
Yeah,
subsequently.
exactly. Online, yeah.
And I think with some of them, I think there's like a sweet spot where I couldn't tell you where it changes, but like when they're kind of 11, 12 Chinese students have had, they still got energy and excitement, enthusiasm. But I think it gets to a point where the pressure just mounts up so much. And, they're kind of doing homework in class for another class just to keep up. Like people know about this in the UK, wherever, but they don't really know. Like these kids work
Exactly.
so unbelievably hard. I don't think it's right personally, and maybe I think you probably agree. Like it's too much. They don't really get any time to be kids. Yes, they do. That's not fair. They do, but by the time they're teenagers, they don't get time to, be teenagers. They're just working. It's like they probably work the same hours as us, more probably. Probably, I'm guessing. you know.
Yeah, exactly. So you think based on your experiences in Thailand, like you described this point in China, and I do agree with you exactly that like the pressure and the gaokao and the looming exams, it just becomes a big thing in their lives. So do you feel that in Thailand that is less the case then for kids or young people?
I feel like there's just a much more laid back feeling in Thailand generally,
Yeah.
in the whole everything. But in school, yeah, I think high achievers in Thai schools, and I've not taught at private schools in Thailand, but I have had friends that have, and they've been teaching kids that are really clever in private schools where their parents are paying a lot of money, and he says they still have fun. They work hard, but they have fun as well. So I'm sure there are instances in Thailand where kids are really pressured to work, but I think generally, if I was studying, I think I'd rather be a student in Thailand.
Yeah. So in terms of painting a picture of what it's like a regular day. I know you did a great blog post for our website, one of the earlier ones you did about a day in the life in Thailand. So maybe if you could talk us through like what was a normal school day, like a Tuesday at your school in Phetchabun, like what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean it's at first, all the kind of quirky cultural things are really exciting. They get a bit of a drag, after a while. The first thing, which is interesting, especially the first month, is you'd start off the day after you've kind of signed in 7:30, maybe 8, you sign your finger in. So you got to get your finger on before then to clock in effectively. And then it would be flag raise, and all the kids would line up. There'd be a few stragglers kind of running in and or getting stopped by the teacher saying, "Wait, you're late. You've got to wait here, and we'll sort you out later." And the kids kind of line up in rows in their grades, all from the young ones to the older ones, and then they do like pledge allegiance, but not quite that, but pay their respects to the three pillars of Thai society, which is the king, Buddha, and the government. Those are like the three things, the three pillars of Thai society. So they'll do the flag, lift the flag up, and have the national anthem every morning. And if you say you were a bit late, you're walking from the office to the area where you're supposed to be there. If you were walking and the national anthem started, you've got to stop. You can't, no one can move, everyone stops and kind of stands. You don't have to do that, but it's quite weird. It's interesting. But you think, at first it's really interesting. And then by the end, a few months in, you're doing a bit of last minute lesson planning or marking. And then they say, oh, you've got to come and do this. Because it seems a bit pointless after a while, but it's interesting. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
can I ask you, because I taught in a private kind of school training center in China, so I have never been part of this. And when I see this for teachers, I think it's one of those really interesting things, and I'm kind of curious hearing about it or reading about it. Like, what's that? So you're describing it from your point of view, and I totally understand that over time it starts to feel like that, and the novelty wears off. But for the kids, like at these kind of schools, like this kind of morning ceremony, is it something joyous, or is it a bit of a kind of a routine and a chore for them as well?
Yeah, I think it's a routine and a chore, to be honest. I think they're not at an age, maybe the older teenagers understand the issues with monarchy and Thai royal family and stuff, which we won't go into. But at the young age, they don't really, they've just been ingrained from a young age, which is a fascinating kind of aspect of their culture, that they're a lot more respectful of elders than British kids for sure, 100%. I never feel, never feel threatened by teenagers in Thailand. I walk my dog around a lake, and there's kind of the naughty teenagers, right, who come and smoke cigarettes. This is in Chiang Rai, where I live now. So they're kind of 16 to 19, and they come and hang out. And I never, even though they're technically the naughty ones, I never feel threatened. Whereas in the UK, a bunch of 14-year-olds kind of hanging around a park bench, it's a different thing. So I think there's like ingrained early on, there's that respect for people older than you, respect for authority, respect for Buddha, respect for the royal family. It's like ingrained in, and I guess this is one of the ways they do it. You never see any misbehaving during this in my whole year. Whereas in a UK school, you would definitely see kids messing around, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
They all stand up, they all do it. They don't, do it with vigor every time, but they do the actions they need to do, and they don't mess around, they don't talk, which is amazing. Hundreds or thousands of kids just doing what they should. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's interesting as well. Like maybe this, I want to ask you about the school and the hierarchy within the school. But now you mentioned the scope of it. Like in Phetchabun, let's say, or in a Chinese. Also, maybe briefly speak to a Chinese school. What was the size of these schools? Like how many kids were in the school? How many kids were in your class?
Yeah, I mean, Thailand is a big school, thousands of kids, I'm guessing. Yeah, it must have been thousands, must have been. I would have some classes, 40 kids in classrooms with no air conditioning, no whiteboards, no technology, just a blackboard and no chalk. I'd have to find chalk or get chalk. And that they were some of the most fun classes because those kids had energy and it was good fun. They were great, but it was challenging to keep 40 kids in order when they're hot, they're tired, Whereas another within the same year group, I would have 30 kids or 25 kids in an air-conditioned room. I'd have all the resources I could ever want. I had a whiteboard, a computer, speakers, everything. And that represents like a private school within a school. So the classrooms I mentioned with the air conditioning, they're on the PE program, or what's
Yeah.
it called, Arnold? You know what I'm talking about? Special,
Yeah,
yeah,
the English
English program,
English program, exactly. Yeah.
something like that. So within the school, there's different tiers of classes you can kind of pay to be in. So that varied a lot. China, I think, was similar, but I wasn't aware of the payments kind of pay grades in China because I wasn't there long enough and didn't talk to the staff as much. But yeah, I had big classes in China, really big, of young kids, which could be tricky. And then I had smaller ones. I think I would say in China there was less disparity, there was more consistency. Considering I was at three schools, that's quite impressive, I think. Whereas Thailand was like really nice classrooms, small class sizes, really big classes in horrible classrooms.
And did you feel there was different dynamic between the students who were in the nicer classrooms with the air conditioning in Thailand and the ones without? Like, what was their attitude like?
Yeah, the ones in the aircon were a bit boring.
Yeah.
A bit like, I want to say, want to be polite. They were just a little bit more, yeah, not as fun,
Yeah.
basically. They didn't want to get involved. Boys and girls didn't want to, be near each other. Bear in mind they're kind of 11, 12 by this point. They were a bit more, they felt younger, even though academically they were superior
Yes.
in most kind of aspects. They felt more childish and younger, whereas the other ones were just, yeah, characters. All of them were
Mm.
characters. Like I enjoyed both, but with the kids in the nice classroom, I had to drag it out of them and really make them get engaged. Whereas the others, I had to calm them down,
Yeah.
which
It's,
obviously I prefer that.
it's really interesting you said it because actually, I in China, at my private training center, I would go to a state school from time to time to teach class at a state school, and the dynamic was similar as what you're describing. It was just a bit more lively, I think, in the state school class. Okay, so you mentioned the wider school community, obviously the bosses, basically, I guess the staff at the school. Tell me a bit about that in Thailand. Like, what was that like? Like, who were your managers? Like, what was your sense of what they wanted from you in terms of key expectations, and how was the relationship with them overall?
I think one thing which is important, and like this is a message, I always say to new teachers, and I learned this firsthand, but I think my character is generally I'm just like, I'll do my best. And if it's not good enough, at least I've done my best. That's what I do. I don't worry about things too much. I do worry about stuff, but I worry about stuff I can't control, but I can do my best. So I think I went into it and just taught the lessons to my best of my ability, and was always friendly and smiley and nice because that's just who I am. And all of the Thai teachers responded fantastically to that. My lessons weren't perfect, definitely not. Like they were good most of the time, but they weren't perfect. I would like potentially, for example, I'm not saying this is a specific memory, but I might have taught the wrong book, on the second day. They don't mind as long as the kids have engaged and you change it and like fix the problem, it's fine. So I think, yeah, what I'm trying to say is the management didn't expect perfection. at all in Thailand or in China for that matter. I think they just want enthusiasm and they just want energy and they just want you to display that you care about the children, you know, and respect them, you know, definitely. But really lovely. Like there was a few teachers in the office who didn't really kind of want to look at me or look at any of the Westerners. But funnily enough, they were the Japanese teachers. They probably couldn't speak English,
Right.
you know, but they're probably Thai Japanese. They probably didn't speak English, you know, didn't want to engage. So yeah, Thailand, everyone was super friendly. There's a weird hierarchy, you know, like the director, when he comes, it's like the kings come to town.
Yeah.
And there's different levels of why. So if a kid whys at you, you might why back. You don't have to why back to a kid, but you might why like this. And then it kind of gets more. And when the director's there, everyone's kind of like this, it's
Yeah.
up above their heads. Um, yeah, it's very strange. It's very strange. He's treated like a king, like a god. Even we had a football match on sports day and he played, but he was so bad. He's kind of overweight man in his 60s, 70s. And people would just run up to him and be like, oh, it's a director, and then kind of so blatantly miss a tackle. And he just dribbled through everyone and then miss. And it
This is an interesting one because I guess I've experienced similar things like in China, and I always felt like in China, there's a certain kind of leeway given to the foreigner because they're not really supposed to understand it. Like you know, so if you as a foreigner make a bit of a social faux pas in a situation similar to that, it maybe would be okay. But this sounds quite severe, obviously, given his status and everything. So was there ever a foreign teacher who would just tackle him or anything like that, or not really?
not quite on that. There was an issue with COVID.
Yeah,
Basically, we'd had a holiday. I mean, Thai schools are notorious for being changing plans and not telling teachers. You know, that's something that's
yeah,
a negative side of it that we can get into if you'd like. But with COVID, because it was still lurking, you know, around, they were saying, okay, you've got a holiday, but you can't travel, and what are all different messaging, different things. And a lot of us kind of said, oh, that's not fair, blah, 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 blah. And some teachers went to Pattaya or Bangkok for a weekend. We had a long weekend, and their school had said, don't travel. And they had gone and traveled. And I kind of see both sides because they should respect the school, but also the school shouldn't. It's a complicated one, but the director kind of held a grudge against these people because they directly kind of defied his orders. So I think, yeah, if you do get on the wrong side, but that wasn't a cultural thing, that was like a, yeah, lack of in the UK, you could never say to someone, you can't travel on your time off, could you? You know, even if it was COVID.
exactly. I do think that was well, it was obviously quite a depressing time by and large. But I do think that was quite a fascinating part of it because I feel like in my dealings with China, certainly before that, and also since then, really, that you know, generally speaking, you build up working relationships with people. Things are kind of you get to know each other. You work things out and you're kind of on the same page. But I did think that the COVID era definitely revealed, like in a heightened stress situation like that, like the cultural differences they become more apparent, and
Definitely.
yeah, it's harder. It's harder. But I think, fingers knock wood, that's not something that is going
Again,
to
don't
happen anytime soon. So okay, so you mentioned so moving slightly away from the school, I think you mentioned this prospect of the April holiday. You went there, uh, travel in Thailand, seeing other parts of Thailand. Yeah, tell us a bit more about like that holiday, what it was like, where did you go, and what
yeah,
was the best part of it?
yeah. I mean, it was building up to this because it had been COVID, so in China and then COVID, and then get to Thailand finally. And then yes, we're in Thailand, that's great, little holiday, but you kind of had the challenges of work and finally this kind of April, I had like a countdown. It was getting closer and closer and closer, and just yeah, the best. It was kind of 2 months holiday. It was amazing. I bought a car, a very old, rubbish car, which I can't believe. It was almost like every time you turn the ignition on, you're scared it's not going to turn on. And sometimes
Okay.
it was a really, really rubbish car. But it was, yeah, I just went on a road trip with a dog who's sitting over there. He's a bit bigger than he was then, and just drove all around the south of Thailand, really, just exploring. Um, Saw some amazing sights, and definitely generally stayed away from the tourist areas, which was like I would recommend everyone to do, especially now. There was during this holiday. So when I arrived in Thailand, went to Phuket, amazing. Went to all these restaurants which I'd kind of really wanted to go to. Went to the beaches. The beaches were empty. I was like, wow, Phuket is the best. I love Phuket. That was in November. Yeah, that was in November. The following April, this April that we're talking about, I went to the same beach, one of the beaches that I'd been to in November, and I was unrecognizable. It was like a different place because it was just full of people. When I'd gone in November, there were a few street sellers and a couple of people on the beach. And then this time in April, it was just packed with Westerners, East Asian people, tourists.
But do you think because just to clarify, so we're speaking about November 2021 and then sort of April 2022. Do you think that was because of the COVID times, or was that because just in the summer holiday it's really busy anyway?
No, that was because of COVID,
COVID, yeah.
definitely.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
when I'd arrived, sorry, I'm not being very clear. When I arrived, I did something called the sandbox scheme, which
yes,
is when
okay,
I had
yeah.
to fly to Phuket and stay on Phuket. And travel to Thailand wasn't super busy at that time.
Mhm.
By April, things had really changed. And like, yeah, my what I'm trying to say is the trips around, between one city and another city, stopping in the countryside, chatting to locals, just scenery you hadn't planned on seeing and you didn't know was there. Just driving around is just amazing. Like that's the beauty of it, just that kind of freedom. Yeah.
And
So
what was
basically,
the so
get away from the tourist areas is what I'm saying.
yeah, absolutely. So, and what was it like in terms of the road? Because that's something I think people that listening to this are wondering, okay, what's a Thai road like? Like, what was it like driving around?
It's fine. The roads are good. Most of the time, they'll kind of have roadworks, which just you go off your lane and onto the other lane, and it for half a mile or something. But the roads are fine. I think compared to other Southeast Asian countries, Thailand's well ahead. Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos. You come back into Thailand, and it's like stepping into another country. It is, but it's like so different. They drive on the same side as us in the UK, which is brilliant. However, they're not the best drivers. I think the bar of like to pass your driving test in Thailand is quite easy. I've had very many near misses. They kind of overtake whichever side they want. They'll just drive kind of 110 miles an hour at some point. So you've just got to have your wits about you. Like my friend who's a really experienced driver, he's driven in the UK since he was 17. He said, "Oh, I can drive, if you want." This was more recently, and I just said, "Unless I want, like, you need to get used to the roads. I wouldn't suggest anyone just come and get into a car straight away, basically."
Okay, exactly. And what about a motorbike? Because that's maybe an earlier resort for people. What's
Yeah,
your
I
advice?
think it's different with a motorbike because you can very much stay on, on the left side. You can be careful. You're not getting up to the same speed as a car. Yeah, getting a motorbike definitely. It's just the long distances, obviously more difficult on the motorbike, but getting public transport across Thailand can be quite enjoyable too. It's a challenge, but getting kind of night buses and trains and stuff, it's all connected. You can get anywhere. I love driving and I love kind of having that control, but also it's quite exciting getting buses and stuff as well. I have enjoyed that over the years.
Okay. So far, obviously, we've been speaking about basically the era 2021, 2022. You're in Thailand. You're back there now, so you obviously really love Thailand. So maybe let's just talk about the country a little bit. What made you sort of enjoy Thailand as much as you do?
It's straight up, it's the quality of life, and that goes hand in hand with the cost of living. It's like it doesn't make sense for me to be in the UK when the cost of living is so much higher and the quality of life is lower. I don't have to worry about anything here in terms of can I afford to do this? Can I afford to do that? Obviously, big things, yes, but day-to-day choices. Can I afford to go to eat at this restaurant? Can I afford to meet my friend for some drinks? Can I afford to buy a new t-shirt or whatever, go to the cinema? It's not a problem. And when I was in the UK after, when I was at uni, I didn't really feel that stress in the UK. And I think it's just got progressively worse. After coming back from China and COVID, it was kind of okay. I remember renting a house in Manchester for £800 or £900 a month. I think it's £800 a month for a two-bedroom house in Manchester. That same place now would be like double almost, 1500 kind of thing. And yeah, just progressively got worse. After I got back from Thailand, it was worse. So I think, yeah, cost of living is incredible here. I pay 200 something pounds a month for a two-bedroom house with a lovely office, a garden. Cost of living's great, food's amazing, people are amazing. Weather, yeah, I think the weather is amazing, but it does, just like anything, when you've lived here for so long, it's kind of not as amazing. Like at the moment, it's just pretty grey every day and then a bit of rain, but it's still better than I think UK weather, probably just about.
Yeah, exactly. So what maybe a slight detour also because I'm obviously visiting Thailand hopefully very soon in August,
Yeah,
and given our shared love of football, I am curious, like, because I know this is a thing for people. It certainly is for me. Like when I go to China, I'm thinking, oh, when is the Premier League starting? Like, how are we going to do this? How am I going to watch it? I think, I'm going to watch the Arsenal Man U game. So it's probably going to be 11:30 or something on the Sunday night, but it's still fine. But like, I'm curious when you're in a Thai city, and you've lived in a few different ones. What's the landscape with that like? Like, are there places that show Premier League games? Do you hang out with people? Like, what's that like?
absolutely. The people love football here. The only problem is, I guarantee you meet 10 people, eight of them will say, Liverpool, 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 Liverpool. And it was like that in the past. It was like that when I came in 2021, or even, yeah, in 20, when Liverpool won in 20,
21, I
COVID
guess.
season, COVID, it was COVID season.
Oh, the 2020. Okay, 2020. Yeah.
2020, yeah. When I came before COVID, that time from China to Thailand in 2019, 2020, I was Liverpool fans everywhere. So it's a thing. I don't know why it's a thing,
Is
but
that a
they all love it.
historical? What's the background with that?
No idea.
Hmm.
No idea. There must be, maybe they came and did a Liverpool Thailand tour in
Yeah,
the
exactly.
something. But people love football. I think everyone will say they love football, and then you start questioning them, and they go, "Oh, I don't know, I don't know." But I've met plenty of people to talk about football with, and it's always on in all the bars
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah, but if City are playing at the same time as Liverpool, they're not going to show City. They'll always show Liverpool, which it can be.
So maybe connecting these two things, like let's say you're in a bar watching a football game where you are now in Chiang Rai. So the cost of living, like what's the cost of a pint, let's say, or do they do pints or is it something else?
Yeah, bottles.
All
Unfortunately,
right. Okay.
that is one thing that's negative. There's no draft beer, ale, or anything like that. But a bottle of Leo, 70 baht probably, which is £1.50,
Okay.
£1.50. Yeah,
Okay.
so not too
Pretty good.
bad.
So it's obviously you love Thailand. if there would be one thing you could change about Thailand, what would that be?
That's so easy and obvious for me. I've thought about it a lot. It's the animals. It's the street animals. It's not pleasant. It's lovely in a way. You know, they're living a free life. Just last night, I stopped at 7-Eleven to get some food, like a little stall outside, and there's two lovely dogs came up, and I said hello and got them some sausages and gave them some sausage, and they're fine, they're healthy enough. Then they just stroll out into the road.
Mm.
I'm just like, oh, just they was fine, they were fine, but I've seen dogs get hit. I ran over a cat a couple of weeks ago, and it's unbelievably, it's fine. I've seen kind of chickens get hit by cars, and it's just like not nice, you know, the way animals suffer here. That's the one thing I would change. And especially with my dog, I feel like on my own, I'm never scared of dogs if I'm by myself. But with him, it's different. So like in a zombie film, when people kind of walk around, or an army film, and they're like looking out. When I go to a new place, I'm always on guard, you know, just in case more than three come out. That's the only negative thing. I wouldn't, you know, not be here because of that, but that is tough, you know.
And
Again,
just
I'm
out of
not.
interest, is that because he might provoke other dogs, or what's the difference between you being alone or with him?
I think they've evolved not to hurt humans.
Yeah.
Obviously, they do sometimes, but if they
Yeah.
bite someone, they're going to get killed. Simple. If they attack another dog, like me going on to their, if I walked into someone's house and there was a pack of dogs, yeah, they might be pissed off. But if I'm just walking down the street, you know, it's kind of their area, it's kind of not. But another dog is like a threat. I mean, I had a conversation with a British guy and his partner who was Thai, and he was saying, "Yeah, I want a dog for protection from the other street dogs." And I said, "That's the last thing you should do, mate. You should not. If you want protection from street dogs, getting a dog is not a good idea." Yeah, so that's it. That's it. I mean, you know, it's a brilliant country. You know, I really do love it. It's got issues, you know, just like any country. But in terms of the people, you know, everyone will smile at you if you really force it, you know, and most people you don't need to force it is what I'm trying to say. But every single person will eventually smile and like, yeah, just feel happy here, and it's easier to be happy here for me anyway than it is in the UK at the moment.
Absolutely. So then, obviously, you did some amazing blog posts throughout your year in Thailand, and then we started talking more, and you started obviously working with impact teaching, which has been fantastic. So, in terms of impact teaching, then, and kind of this whole industry and what you've seen, um, I guess I think you touched on sort of why you think it's a good thing to do in terms of the lifestyle and things like that. I guess maybe I have a slightly different question for you. I do, in terms of our work, like I tend to do the interviews with the candidates, but you've been in this position, you've dealt with a lot of them, you know a lot of them, they know you. If when it comes to interviewing, for me, interviewing a candidate or maybe the candidate thinking about teaching abroad, like what do you think is the key thing they should consider based on everything you've experienced? What's the key consideration that you think is important and make someone suitable or not suitable to do this?
It's a great question. Do you mean what trait in a person, in a teacher,
Yeah,
right?
I guess, yeah.
I would say the most important thing is openness. More so than versatility and strength, because I think that comes. I think being reliable and working hard, that's important because you need to do that to survive as a teacher. But we've rarely had issues in the time I've been here with people like that. I would say openness and a willingness to accept that the school does things differently,
Yeah.
and you're there to do a job for the school. You're not there to do a job for impact teaching. You're there to do a job for the school. You're not working for an English company. You're
Yeah.
working for a Thai school or a Hungarian school.
Mm.
And being open to that and accepting the differences. And then culturally, I'm not saying you have to eat frog, Thai frog or Hungarian pig's trotters or whatever, but just an attempt to kind of assimilate and an openness. I just remember meeting a guy in my training in China, not an impact person, another from another company, and he just had a rant about how chopsticks were stupid and how forks are so much better. And I was just like, you're not going to get very far, mate. You're not going to enjoy this for a start. You need to be open and want to meet people and absorb the culture and accept you won't agree with it all the time. You won't like everything you eat, but just accept it and move on and, keep the positivity up and then you'll be fine. You'll have a great time.
That's a great point. I think I actually might tweak the way I talk to the candidates because I think that's a really good way of framing it. So, um, yeah, I guess we've covered most things. I just obviously we were talking about, last week we talked about the future and how your role is changing and the other things you'll be doing and what we're doing together. So in terms of just the future and the work we're doing and what you're working on, what are you most excited about going forward?
I'm I think the most uh exciting thing for me is this potential of more media, creating more content for people, for potential teachers, for our actual teachers, growing, a wide variety of content, traveling within that. I love to travel. I've not traveled much since I've been here in the last year in Chiang Mai and now in Chiang Rai. So I'd love to go to China and get some footage and meet our teachers and yeah, just kind of keep growing really because I genuinely think teaching abroad is such a brilliant thing for a 21-year-old to do or a 35-year-old or however old you are. It doesn't matter. I just think getting out of your comfort zone, like I really believe in it. Um, and yeah, I just want to yeah see us grow and exciting things like Australia. It's so cool to have another thing, another place, and just to seeing people kind of develop is really a buzz. But on a selfish level, going and filming in Bangkok or China or Australia, that's what I really want to do. Just
Yeah.
to let you know, just
Definitely. No, we absolutely
yeah,
want to make that happen. Well, one of the next times to do that also will obviously be when we meet in person in
yeah.
August, and I can't wait. But one thing actually, I started to worry about what you said. I looked at the fixtures for this season. I think the Liverpool away game is quite early. I hope now that's not during my time in Thailand because
I can
that could
show
be a
you
bit of
a
that could be a
nice
bit
bar full of Liverpool fans.
I know. But yeah, no, it's great. It's great. It's so interesting. I actually feel there's so much more. This is the thing, like we spoke about a bit last week. I think that's what I also love so much about this experience. I made some notes, other stuff to ask you, but I didn't get to quite a lot of it because there's so much to talk about. And I think that is it. Like living abroad, you experience so much more than you would in your home country, just because it all comes at you. And yeah, I'm basically pretty jealous of you as well, like living in Thailand, and look forward to catching up. So yeah, for everyone watched, I hope it's been great to get Josh a bit more like I do. So a real pleasure, and we'll be back with more content like this very soon. Thank you all.
Yeah, give us a like and a follow if you really enjoyed this. That'd be great. We're trying to grow YouTube and grow everything, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Cheers,
See you all
everyone.
soon.
Bye. See you, Arnold.
Bye.